Welcome to Weekend Shelf Control with me, Liam,
And me, Frankie.
and this is our May wrap up where we talk about all the books we read in May. So I read six,
I read three.
so stick around to find out what we thought about them. So, the first book that I read in May, I'm not going to talk too much about this because we are doing a Stephen King project. So we will eventually get to this one and have a deep dive discussion. But I did read The Drawing of the Three by Stephen King. This is the second Dark Tower book. This is also a paperback illustrated version. So
Nice.
it does have, I'll show you like one of the early ones. It does have these full page illustrations in it. Um, I I have the whole Dark Tower series in these paperback illustrated versions. I don't know why. I was like that would be a cool thing to have.
Hmm.
So I found it on eBay and got it a few years ago when I first decided to read all of Stephen King's books. I really struggled with The Gunslinger, the first Dark Tower book. And I know that's kind of coming up for you. So I won't talk too much about it. All I'll say is I've been trying to read a Stephen King book a quarter. So every 3 months. This is my first Stephen King book of 2026. Because knowing that this was following The Gunslinger, I was just reluctant to read it because I just really didn't enjoy that. But this book is so good. Like it's night and day from The Gunslinger to this. Um, the Gunslinger within the context of this book now just kind of just feels like backstory. And I would say that like even after reading this, it doesn't feel to me like the main plot of the Dark Tower and what Stephen King is attempting to do with this series isn't really clear to me yet. What this book feels like is, you know, in like a fantasy movie or book or something, where you start with your like reluctant hero, and then you have them kind of like gather in their companions before they go off on their quest. This book is very much just the gathering the companions before going off on the quest. That is like the entirety of what this book is about, pretty much.
I have
But
heard that. I've heard people say, get through the gunslinger because then it gets
yeah,
better. But I have also
yeah,
heard people say that the third book onwards is sort of where it really gets into it.
I can
Now that
believe that because
explains
it
why.
feels so. I would say like this is also the first book where you really start getting a good idea of that idea of Stephen King toying with his own creations and um there's references in here to other things that I appreciated. So this is very much him starting to build out that kind of mythology around the Dark Tower and
Mm.
how his other works start tying into it. So I super enjoyed this. I'm now so excited to carry on reading the series, but I've got to obviously doing them in publication order. I've got a whole bunch of other books to get to before I get to the third one. But I am giving this a 4 out of 5.
Mm.
Really enjoyed it. Really, really enjoyed it. And bear in mind, right, that's a 4 out of 5 for a book where, in all honesty, there isn't a lot of story. It's just characters. But it's Stephen King, and Stephen King does characters so well, and this is just so interesting. I'm very excited to start talking to you about these books once we kind of get there with the project.
Yes. I've been a bit slow, but there's a number of novellas which are going to help me feel better about catching up.
Yeah,
But there's a few long books, especially. I know we did have an idea of what to do regarding The Stand being in the
yeah,
list twice, and So I will now be reading that a bit sooner than I thought because of what we decided to do. So I am going to have another long book soon.
Yeah,
But
and you've got it coming up as well. But
yeah,
yeah,
but I
you've
mean,
got so many
The
good
Stand
books.
I know is like, I love The Stand. So I'm really
Yeah,
excited to read it again. So that's going to help me read it quicker. So,
yeah,
there is that at least.
yeah. And
Um,
my next Stephen King now
yeah.
is Misery, which I've heard so many
Uh,
good things about. So I'm excited to, not leave it half a year
that's such
before.
a good movie as well. So I'm curious to see
Never
what the
seen it.
book is like. Oh, really? I only saw
Yeah,
it like within the last year or the year before. I was really
yeah,
late to it. And that's one of those ones that I'm like, yeah, people were right. This is
mm,
really good. So,
yeah.
I read long books this month, which is why I only have three. That I had a fourth one, but I didn't quite get it finished. So that's going to be next month. But I kicked things off with the Da Vinci Code by Dan Brown because I read Angels and Demons last month and absolutely loved it. This one I did not love as much.
Mm.
It's
Which
very,
is interesting because
yeah,
that's the one that really blew up for him, isn't it?
yeah.
Mm.
And I don't know why, except, that there was, I think, apparently a bit of controversy because of the, what was talked about in this book as far as religion goes, because this is about this guy. I'm just seeing if it's got, then it doesn't have the name on the back. I'm going to not remember the name, but this guy who's a curator at the Louvre is killed, and Langdon is in Paris giving a talk, and he gets called there by the police, and it's revealed that his name, like the curator did all this stuff before he died. He like kind of grotesquely used his wounds and his blood to do some stuff, but also his
Mm.
name was mentioned, so the cop is obviously suspicious. And then this woman turns up who is a cryptologist, yes, and she basically tells him, "You're a suspect. We need to get out of here." The curator was her grandfather, but she'd been estranged from him, and they work out some clues, find something that he had left for them to find, and escape from the police. And so then they're on the run, the cops are after them. They find out there's a group that I can't remember the name of. And basically, this group has been around, they had connections with the like Knights Templar, and the whole thing for them was that Jesus was married to Mary Magdalene, and they sort of have their thing that they have always protected her where she was buried, and basically what is the Holy Grail. And
Mm.
so there's also a historian guy, researcher guy, that is like one of the most sort of what's the word, like knowledgeable people about the Holy Grail. Like
Yeah.
that's his life's work, is researching into it. So he has a house, so they go there to him to get help with the clues, because what they have found is a like special device, and they need to crack the code to figure it out to get clues, because it may lead them to the Holy Grail. And the reason why this book I didn't like as much as the first book is just it's got thriller elements like the
Mm.
first book, but the pace is much slower. There's a whole lot of talking and discussion about religious history and the research. And I mean, some of it's good because you learn things. I learned the origin of Friday the 13th. So
Okay.
that was to do with the Knights Templar and a thing that happened on a Friday the 13th.
Mm.
And so that's why it became known as an unlucky day. So that was interesting. But there were
Yeah.
times where, yeah, there was just a lot of discussion and not a lot happening. But there was some action stuff, which was good. So I didn't dislike the book. It just wasn't the fun thrill ride that the first book was. And I also thought the plot of the first book was more interesting, I guess, because it's sort of like a serial killer Illuminati finding the path and all of that.
Yeah.
This one had a bit less going on. Oh, and the other thing was you also have this guy who is after them. That's not, you got the police after them, and also this other guy who has killed, he's the one who killed the curator and other people in this group. And so he's also after them because he's been hired by some mysterious person, because they're also wanting to find the Holy Grail, but they are connected to the Catholic Church. So they are looking for it to bury it, pretty much,
Okay.
because the church is very against that, because it's obviously against their teachings. So
Yeah.
so yeah, it's basically they're on the run. So there is still some stuff. But yes, I did watch the movie afterwards. Similar thoughts about the movie. It's
Did sorry, did the Da Vinci Code movie come out first?
yes,
Okay. Yeah.
because that was the famous book, I guess. They went
Yeah.
there with the movie first. It obviously cut out a lot of the explanations in the movie, so in that way, it was a faster flow over everything. It did slightly change stuff from the book, and it was fine, but it was pretty average. And
Okay.
I'm not completely sold on Tom Hanks as Langdon.
Yeah.
So I need to watch Angels and Demons, the movie, to see,
Yeah.
but I'm a bit worried. But yes, so I'm glad I read it, but it's a little disappointing to have that step down from the first book, and I'm curious. I hope that the series isn't going to follow that trajectory, and I hope it's going to come back and be good, but we'll see. I'm putting this aside for a while now to read other things. I just wanted to get this one done straight away so I could watch the first two movies.
Okay, my next book. If anyone that's watched our May book haul part 2 will know that I acquired a bunch of Carlton Mellick III's books. So I've had this one on my shelf for a couple of years. So I figured, hey, if I'm gonna own 30 plus, I might as well start at the beginning. So I read Satan Burger. This is the I want to say the 15th anniversary special. But I can't see anywhere that says that. I'm sure it is though, because it said so when I purchased it on Amazon. But it has an essay at the start of it by John Skip. Yeah, I'm literally seeing nowhere that says that it is a 15th anniversary special, but I think it is. The reason why I'm hesitating, I'm going to look it up. So this is the 20th anniversary special, and I'm pleased because if you haven't seen it, I would say look it up with caution. I think, Frankie, I think you looked it up. The original cover, when this was first released, is not the sort of cover that I would particularly love to have on my shelf. Would you like to describe it, Frankie?
I don't remember it. I must have
Um,
wiped it from my mind.
there was a plate and then like a naked man, I think, from behind.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, like on all fours over a plate. I don't know. It was a weird. I don't want that on my shelf particularly.
No.
This is a better cover at least. So what to say about Satan Burger? This is a Bizarro book, and in this opening essay by John Skip, he's talking all about Satan Berger's influence on Bizarro as a sort of subgenre and all this sort of stuff. John Skip, big fan of this book, it sounds like. Liam Underwood, not as big of a fan. The thing about this is, it's Bizarro in the way that it's throwing like a whole bunch of stuff at the wall and it's seeing what sticks. Because conceptually, this sounds kind of interesting, where God basically decides to shut down heaven. So if you die, your soul doesn't have anywhere to go. So your body just like carries on existing, but like in death, essentially. And when people get to a certain age, they just lose all interest in anything. So they'll just like sit and stare at walls. And it's like the younger generation are trying to like fight against this this death by monotony, essentially. And then Satan comes along and opens up a fast food joint to you can sell your soul for a burger. But Satan also has this thing where if he touches something inanimate, he brings it to life. So the entire restaurant is like populated by essentially living machinery. So like the register talks and stuff, and like chairs and stuff. And because when people die, their souls can't escape. Their bodies are technically inanimate. So one of the like main characters, Satan, gets bored one day and just keeps touching different parts of his body. So all of his different limbs start coming to life. Like there are ideas and moments in this that really do feel just like a step away from Terry Pratchett's Discworld. And it's that very like imaginative, out there, but it's kind of saying something about society, like a dark, twisted sort of through the looking glass version of Discworld at times. But then there are also other things that Carlton Mellick III does in this book that didn't necessarily feel needed to me, and kind of thrown in there for like shock value. And it's one of those books that's so frustrating because there's some like really interesting ideas, in that like the main character has this like issue with their vision where everything they describe it as everything looks like they're tripping on drugs, so everything looks wavy and weird, but they have this ability called God's eyes where they can project their vision outward, which is such a neat narrative device to allow your protagonist to witness events that are happening outside of their vicinity. Just like a really interesting touch, and it does play into this idea later on. But then this like portal to a different dimension opens up, and all these different aliens start coming. And there's this like weird alien race that's like fueled by sex, essentially, but they're continuously described as being really young, and like to the point where like people are pointing out to protagonists who embarks on a relationship with one of them, like, this is questionable. And like even the protagonist is like, yeah, this is weird, but I'm in love with her, so I'm going to carry on, sort of thing. And it's just like that point is reiterated so many times that it starts feeling really weird as to why it's been included, because maybe there's something about it that I'm not picking up on, but it didn't feel like it built to anything or went anywhere that justified its inclusion. So like just weird stuff like that felt unnecessary kind of dragged this down for me. So as much as there are interesting ideas throughout it, I have to say, like, overall, this was like a 2 out of 5 for me. Yeah, like there were moments that I was engaged, and then there were other moments that I was just like, this is becoming a bit of a chore, and I don't really understand
So I
why
guess
it's been included.
you hope now, having just purchased a whole lot of his books, that those good moments shine more in
That's
his later
right.
writing.
Exactly. There is potential in these pages, and I'm hoping that when someone has written 60 odd books, right, some of them have to be good. Just law of averages. Surely. Okay. Um, and like you can tell by reading this, it is an author that has a lot of ideas and doesn't feel beholden to write in a traditional way. So like there's something that is kind of interesting about that, just from a I don't know where this is going kind of angle. Um, and hopefully that element in his future books will be harnessed to do something more interesting. But I have seen on Reddit some people have like ranked his books, like people that have read like 30 plus of them, and even like fans of his will say like they do run the spectrum of some of them are really bad, but some of them are incredible, and it's different ones are going to hit differently for different people.
Yeah.
So I am optimistic that some of them at least will be really good. I just think, I mean, the other thing to bear in mind, right, is this is his first book. So there is a level of rough around the edges to be expected. And how interesting that for a first book, you do kind of start establishing a whole subgenre of Bizarro. Um, and he would have been, I think, early 20s when this got published. So, like, there's definitely things about this that I can appreciate, but there's just a whole bunch of like stuff that is harder to understand its relevance. So that's what drags this down for me.
My next book is completely different from that. I read Murder Before Evensong by Richard Coles, which is just, I picked this up recently. This is the one that has a step back cover that disappointingly just has quotes.
Yeah.
This is the first book in a series. It's like a cozy crime, but I would say don't go into it if you really are after that crime element, because you've got about 100 pages before the dead body shows up. It's very much about, like, it's set in a small village and it's just about the people. So you're just like spending time with these characters before the murder happens. And then after a while, there is a second murder. So but yes, it didn't blow me away, but it was an enjoyable read. I wasn't think All I was thinking about who did it, but it wasn't to me. It didn't feel like really leaning into the who could it be. It just
Okay.
was more, you know, you're just following the lives of these people and this thing has happened more than
Right.
the who done it side of it.
Yeah.
So I was thinking about who it was, but you know, it is definitely more about the people than the plot, I think. So I would be curious probably to read more, just because I did enjoy the characters enough that I would be, happy to come visit again. There is some new drama in the second book, I think. This is set in, the main character is the priest in the, I think this is Anglican church. But anyway, at the end of the book, their parish has been joined with another parish to become one. So I think there's going to be some drama from that and some new characters from that in the next book, which I assume will have another murder along the way. But yes, so that was a nice sort of cozy book to read in between my thriller horror reads of the month.
What did you rate that one?
I think I gave it 3 stars.
Okay.
Because yes, it's one of those. I mean, I put it above average, but it didn't
Yeah.
blow me away. So, but it was a good book.
Okay. Um, This next one, you might remember if you watched our January book haul, I believe it was. But this is Hysterical by Amber Dean, which is a indie author. And this is their debut book. And I do have the signed, personalized, of course. Amber Dean, this is the one that when it arrived with a whole bunch of swag that I wasn't expecting. So it had like a hoodie, and it had a thing that I think I remember saying, like, I think this is an ice pick. And I said, like, when I read the book, I'll be able to confirm if it is or not. It was an ice pick. So in this book, you're following the protagonist, whose name is Jessie Ann. It's set in 2013 New York City, and she has this crush on her best friend, whose name is Tinsel. And Tinsel is always described as being like the life of the party. She's, one of those people that anytime she walks into a room, fun seems to gravitate to her. And Jessie Ann wants to be part of that orbit, and wants to take their friendship to the next level. But Tinsel doesn't seem to be reciprocating those feelings. And Jessie Ann is struggling to kind of process this unrequited love. And it starts manifesting itself. And this is a book kind of full of feminine rage. And I'd say there are almost elements of American Psycho in this, where Jessie Ann starts exhibiting some violent tendencies that she then struggles to control. So, what I found really interesting about this book is how alive the setting felt. Like that, like 2013 New York City feels just brilliantly brought to life in this book. And Jessie Ann kind of is an interesting character, right? Because she's going to these like parties and this like sort of like upper class kind of seen as lifestyle where there's like drugs and alcohol and that, like, we're in our 20s and we're having fun, whatever that costs, kind of thing. But then she's also like she's not working, so she is on Craigslist, where she basically sells this service where people can spank her for money. So she also like dabbles in this like seedy like underbelly of New York City as well. So you have that kind of dichotomy. That's the word, sort of like running through the book. And it feels like the whole book is full of these like mirror images almost, because you've got how Jessie Ann is presenting to the world, but then you're also seeing the thoughts that are going through her head of how she wants to murder certain people, and how she just like loves so hard that she just wants to keep someone with her forever, which is an interesting kind of like two sides of the same coin, essentially, right? Of like, love should be this nice feeling, but then it's taken to this extreme. So yeah, I thought this was really enjoyable. My only kind of minor criticism is that by the end, some of Jessie Ann's kind of like thought patterns become a little bit repetitive, of just how she's like interpreting things and how she's like demonstrating those feelings in her mind, and like what she's thinking about and wanting to do. But when the violence hits, it is unflinching. It's just, yeah, it's interesting reading this kind of unreliable narrator who you end up kind of like feeling for her, but you also are very much like, oh, this is not good. This is not going to end well. Like this is not a healthy outlook to be having. So yeah, uh, cool cover. Book was really cool. I definitely enjoyed this. 4 out of 5.
Ah, 2 4 stars.
Yes.
The last book that I finished this month was Salem's Lot, so I'm not really going to talk about it because we did a whole video on it, which I will link below when it's out. I'm not sure if it'll be out before or after this one. We'll see. But I did enjoy it. This was the second time reading it. I was a bit harsh on it the first time. I gave it quite a low. I enjoyed it, but I gave it a low rating. Whereas this time I enjoyed it way more. And what was past me thinking, I don't know. I will just quickly add that I started watching the miniseries from 2004, I think. I know in our video I said 80s or 90s, which I just pulled out of nowhere based on the fact that Rob Lowe was in it. And so I just, when I think of Rob Lowe, I think 80s, 90s. And it's quite interesting that there's some changes to the story which are different or bad, depending, which obviously I won't mention because of spoilers. But one thing I will say is the Straker and Barlow completely, like there's a lot of descriptions about them in the book and they're completely different in this, and it's weird. Straker is mentioned a lot as being bald, and in this he's played by Donald Sutherland, looking a bit President Snow, big white hair, big white beard, so very different. And Barlow is described, slicked back dark hair, sort of your traditional European vampire look. And in the movie he looks like a cowboy from a ranch. He's got like a hat and he's got like blonde hair, and just he looks like someone you would expect. But he's still had some. There's only been one scene. I'm only halfway through this miniseries, and he's just been in one part, and he still did have the menace that you would want of that character. But it was just really weird to see these two characters be so different from the books. But yes, so I don't know that I have to wait. I'm a little over halfway. It's a 3-hour thing. We shall see if I end up enjoying it, but at the moment it's okay.
And what did you rate the book this time around?
I gave it 4.5 this time.
That's a vast improvement on your first encounter.
I don't know what I was thinking the first time, but this time there was definitely a lot of really creepy scenes. So yes, the horror was strong in it. The characters were strong in it. So yes, I had a good time.
Okay, my next book. This is Zola by D.E. McCluskey. This is also a personalized book. I don't know if you can read.
If you enjoy this book, then you are a sick puppy, and I love that. Are you a sick puppy?
Yep. So this, if you remember a couple of months ago, I spoke about Cravings, but also by McCluskey, which was about the pregnant woman who developed these cravings to eat something. Something not nice. So same author, still doing this like extreme horror kind of. This is like literally extreme horror series presents Zola. So in this book, you've got this woman called Andrea, and she's married to Anthony Zola, and the marriage starts out nice enough, but then Anthony gets a little bit too carefree with his fists, and he becomes a very abusive husband. Andrea becomes pregnant, and when the baby is born, as a practical joke, and because Andrea has a love of cheese, Anthony decides to name their son Gordon Zola. And Anthony just like the first half of this book is kind of from like Andrea's perspective, pretty much. And Gordon gets to like age, I think it's like 11 or 12 or something, and his dad's taking him off every few nights. And one night they come back, and Gordon is very like restrained and upset. And Andrea discovers where Anthony's been taking him and what he's been making Gordon do with his friends for money. And none of it is pleasant. So Andrea loses her shit. Things happen, but Andrea isn't like forward thinking to the point of, if we do take out the one person in this family household that has a job and is bringing in consistent money, how do we carry on surviving? So that's one problem they have to solve. What do they eat is another problem they have to solve. And Andrea does come up with quite creative solutions to these problems, and cheese is involved along the way. I'm trying to be careful with what I say here because I don't want to give too much away in case someone does decide they do want to read this. But anyway, the second half of the book is Gordon when he's older, and he's had a very sheltered life, and he's obviously had a very traumatic upbringing. And it's kind of told more from Gordon's perspective of him just trying to understand the way the world works and his place in it, and how he can continue, basically. And I'd heard about this book as being like a difficult, hard book to read. I mean, if you look, Goodreads has a list of extreme horror books, and this is kind of quite high up in that list. It's on the first page at least. And after reading Cravings, I think if you remember, I said in Cravings, like I liked it, but I felt like it could have been pushed a little bit further. And I read like the first half of this or so, and I was like, yeah, like I get it, and like there is some extreme horror in it, and some of it just isn't pleasant. But none of it was kind of like, I wasn't like, why are people saying this is going to put you off cheese and all this sort of thing? Like, there's don't get me wrong, there's some icky things to do with cheese, but I wasn't getting it until a certain page happened. And I'm gonna read a paragraph from this page for you, Frankie. And I think what Frankie's going to do when editing this is replace what I'm saying with music, but we'll still hopefully capture Frankie's reaction, because that's what we're looking for. Because again, right, I think it's fascinating with these sorts of books how the English language can be wielded and constructed in such a way. And after reading this paragraph, I was like, oh, I get it. I get why people say that this is a very extreme book. Like, check your trigger warnings, all this sort of thing before reading it. So I'll be honest, I don't know how well this paragraph is going to work out of context. All you need to know is during this bit, Gordon is older. Okay, so I guess we'll start here with the music, because there is a little spoiler that's going to happen as well. And you can just enjoy Frankie reacting.
Oh, now I'm on the spot.
Yeah, to page 118 of Zola. And I'll just say before the music starts, this is the bit where I read it and my face just contorted into ways that I didn't realize it was doing. It made me wince and just react very viscerally to words on a page. Okay, begin the music. stop there. Um, we can end the music, and that was quite a long section, so you might want to just cut, to the your favorite parts of that. Um,
I have to
yeah,
say, that wasn't as bad as I was expecting, but I think it's something that is going to be more effective for a male reader.
that's fair. Yes. Yeah, because for me, I just wasn't expecting it, to be honest. And after reading that, I was like, oh yeah, I get why people say that this is a nasty, nasty book, and why
Yeah.
why why McCluskey would say if you like it, you're a sick puppy. 3.5 out of 5.
it's, it's definitely interesting that that is my little sample from that story.
Honestly, because like everything else, like that was page 118. So everything else, I was like, yeah, there's nasty bits in it, and unpleasant bits and all this sort of thing. But then that happened, and I was like, Jesus, like that is oof, that. I was just reading this by myself, just like, oh, that. No, I don't like it. Don't like
Yeah.
it. But you're right. It maybe has more of an impact for a male reader.
I think you probably get more of the phantom feelings of what you are reading.
Yeah. But again, just
But,
who thinks of putting these words
well,
in that order?
yeah. I mean, that's the question for a lot of the authors you read. Like,
That is,
where do these ideas come from?
that is a valid point. Okay, so my next book I read was Modern Hysteria by Aaron Beauregard. Now, I saw this cover and I was just like, I don't know if I'm really feeling the vibe. Like, it felt very like manga inspired. I don't know why. I wasn't like, it wasn't speaking to me. After reading this book, I would say for anyone who is curious about starting with Aaron Beauregard, this is an excellent place to start. This is a really good book. So the story is about this like internet trend that is kind of circulating around like the dark web, um, which is hosted by this character called Mr. Boy, who essentially looks like this. He's got light bulbs for eyes that light up, and this weird like bowl haircut, and these big ears, and this like plastic expressionless mask essentially for a face. Um, and basically, he has what's called a dropout challenge of 25 steps that need to be completed. And the last one is you drop out of life. And he's targeting teenagers, um, and trying to, encourage them to remove themselves from the world. So one of the teenagers that he targets is this boy called Ralphie, and his older brother is this aspiring graphic artist, but he's got no inspiration, he's got no friends. Every time he tries to draw an idea, it just doesn't go anywhere. And then Ralphie completes the dropout challenge, and Derek, his brother, starts trying to figure out why would my brother do this? What was going on? And in his investigation, he discovers this challenge and discovers this Mr. Boy character, and starts digging deeper. And he goes to the police, and he realizes that even if he collects evidence, the police aren't going to do a lot about it. There's other previous cases where similar things have happened, and the sentence doesn't really match up to the severity of the crime. Um, so Derek decides he's going to take things into his own hands, but in doing this, he becomes very creatively inspired and starts channeling all of this into a graphic novel that he's created. On the flip side, you also start following the character behind Mr. Boy, and it's this kind of very well-to-do man with a wife and kid, but he's got these untraditional fetishes, let's say, and he basically gets off on forcing these teenagers to do this. So you follow these two kind of different characters, right? And you know, Derek starts trying to figure out who is responsible and how he could get his revenge. And what's interesting about this is Beauregard basically uses the character of Roger, I believe his name is the guy that is kind of behind Mr. Boy, and that's not really a spoiler because you find that out very early on. Let me just confirm that is the name. I'm sure it is. Nope, Richard. Believe it's Richard. Yeah, Richard makes a lot more sense than fucking Roger. Where did I get Roger from? Yeah, Richard. So he finds out you've got Richard who's behind it all, which isn't a spoiler because that's kind of revealed quite early on. And Beauregard kind of uses Richard as the way to inject the more extreme horror-y side of things into this book. But then you've got this really interesting story of Derek. Kind of how far would someone be willing to go to avenge the death of a loved one? And upon his brother's death, it also massively impacts his mum, who is already struggling with this sort of like drink and drug problem. So it starts talking about that idea, right, of would you be willing to become a monster as part of your act of vengeance, essentially? And Derek is kind of channeling all of this into his graphic novel, where he's also trying to come up with, like, because it's very much autobiographical of what he's experiencing, he then decides, well, what would be the best ending for this story as well? Like, how far am I willing to go, and how would I end this story if I had the control of that? And how can I manipulate real events to give me that ending? So just really interesting idea. That that character of Mr. Boy is very creepy. That idea of the internet kind of being used to target vulnerable teenagers and, you know, entice them into this kind of sick idea of, you know, completing these 25 tasks and ending things that way. Just, you know, it's not within the realm of unbelievability. So there's just an element to this that is just dark in how realistic it has the potential to be. I will say, I know that Alan Beauregard is known for being an extreme horror author. And like I said, he uses that character of Richard to allow for those scenes. But I don't know if in this book that element was entirely necessary. I think this book could have worked just as well as a kind of like cat and mouse game between the two, eventually escalating to how extreme of a horror would you be willing to inflict on someone as a form of vengeance, which maybe would have been a more powerful kind of crescendo to build to, potentially. I don't know. All I'll say is, regardless, it still really worked for me. And even those like extreme horror bits that, you know, at times they do feel almost farcical, because you're reading it and you're just like, it's almost a step too far at times. Interestingly, and this is not a spoiler, but there's one scene in this that's very similar to the scene that I read out in Zola. And it was interesting going from one book to the other, not expecting such a scene in either of those books. But in Zola, it's a straw, and in this one, it's a rose with thorns.
Ugh.
Yeah, which is going to be fascinating for anyone watching this because obviously that was all covered with music, but maybe they'll be able to interpret what I'm saying anyway. But yeah, regardless, I really enjoyed this. Like I said, I think this would be a great starting point for anyone that did want to experiment with Alan Beauregard, because yes, there's extreme horror elements to it, but the story is still really good and really compelling, and the ideas that are being tackled here are really interesting. So I gave this a 4 out of 5.
You're going pretty well for the month with your ratings.
Yeah. So how do you end a month that's on track to being really good? Well, I always chase up an Alan Beauregard with a Daniel J. Volpe, and since Daniel J. Volpe is one of my favourite authors, it's a pretty good way to end the month. So I finished with Black Hearts and Red Teeth by Daniel J. Volpe. Now, this is a sequel to A Gift of Death, which I read last year.
Which is in my wish list.
Yeah, this is Volpe doing vampires, essentially. So I have to be careful with what I say about this because I don't want to give any spoilers for A Gift of Death. But let's just say there are some characters that are in this that have carried over, and I've always appreciated the way that Volpe kind of blends sex and horror. I've said that before on the podcast. And I think with vampires, you have a really ample opportunity to play into that idea, which Volpe does excellently. You've also in this one got a team of vampire hunters. So it is just very much, it's your standard kind of story of, kind of similar to Modern Hysteria, actually, of vengeance and trying to make a wrong a right, and how far would you be willing to go for that, and what could the potential consequences of such an act be. So once again, I think it's great to kind of check back in with some of those characters from the previous book. The opening chapter in particular is very, very satisfying from the previous book. And yeah, it's just, this is a really interesting world to be a part of. And it's another book that I just had a really, really great time with. So I gave this a 3.5 out of 5. And I'm trying to be careful to not spoil anything, so I'm being a little bit more vague with how I'm describing this. Yeah. But it's Volpe doing what Volpe does, and I like what Volpe does. So I very much enjoyed this.
I did come close to purchasing book 1 last month, but I didn't. So it's still waiting to be read.
I would be curious, because I also know that kind of that world of extreme horror and splatterpunk isn't a world that you're overly familiar with. And I wonder, would Daniel J. Volpe be like a good introduction for you into that?
Well, we'll see. I mean, it's a good start with vampires.
Yes, yeah.
Which is actually why it's in my wish list, because you recommended that to me because it has vampires.
Yeah, and I'm not like too familiar with sort of vampire literature, quite honestly.
Well, I mean, I'm not a big study. Like, I don't have all the knowledge, but I do have a lot of favorite vampire books and movies. So yes, it's the, if you're looking at different monsters, shall we say, in books and movies, vampires is one of my top ones that will get me more interested.
Yeah, and I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on how the vampire is presented in these books. Like, it's not that it's done anything like particularly different or weird or unusual or out there, it's just I obviously not being overly familiar. I don't know how this would stack up compared to other vampire books that you have read. So I'd be very curious to hear your thoughts on that.
Well, hopefully it won't be too long until I get to it.
Yeah. So yeah, for me, those were the 6 books I read, and most of them were really good, like way above average. The only kind of blip for me was Satanberger.
And I had a good month. I didn't have any bad books, even though Salem's Lot was the only like really good one.
Yeah.
But that's okay because it was still an enjoyable month, and yes, no disappointments. It's always good when you have no disappointments.
Yeah. Well, I mean, 3 of my books were 4 out of 5, which for me, that's unusual.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was very pleased with the way May went when it came to my reading.
And hopefully June will be just as good or better.
We'll find out.
Cool. All right. We are done. So thank you everyone for watching, and we will be back with another video soon because I'm not sure what our order is. So, but there'll be something.